Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat. And this lesson we're looking at how we're going to make this login screen in Visual Basic.net, and we're going to use XML to do it. And it's going to involve having multiple screen forms as well. And we're going to use an XML file to store all the user IDs and passwords in. So let's have a look here at what we're going to have. So the finished program for this lesson, what we're going to have there is that there'll be three screens. So there'll be a front screen that comes up. You can click log on, it goes to the login screen, you can enter the details. If your details are found in the XML file of users, then it's going to take you to this main application form that's a menu. So this is kind of going to link into our tennis dream team that we've been working on with a few of the previous lessons. So that's the idea here. And we're going to have this set of three screens that are all interlinked and work together. So it's a pretty nice little project actually with a lot of really useful learning. So let's have a quick look at it here. So the idea is that on this screen, we're also going to have in future lessons how you could create a new user account, how we could have some admin functions to maintain this XML file of passwords. And for the moment though, on this lesson, we're just going to do the login. So you click login, and that's going to take you to the login screen. So here you can type a user. Now, if we put in Passy, who's not one of the authorized users, and we'll put in his password, see how we've got the eye here to show and hide it. So at the moment it's in hide mode and we can't see it. If we click it, that's eye open mode, and we can see, oh, Passy, kangaroo 22. Try and log in. User details not found, please try again. All right, so we'll just flick the eye there and try again. Now, someone who is in the user database is this guy called Bazza, and Bazza's password is B-A-Z-Z-A, Bazza boy 1234. So we can check that out by putting the eye on here, click the eye again, it goes off, and log in. And see, Bazza had a successful login, and notice what's happened is that the other two screens have been hidden, they've disappeared, and now we're on this main menu screen. Now nothing's hooked up to this yet, that'll be kind of in future lessons, but we will do the log off, so you can log off from here. Are you sure you want to log off? If you say no, it won't do it. If you say yes, it'll just close down everything, and that's done. So that's kind of the finished application that's going to come out of this lesson, but we're not going to build it all in one go. We'll kind of do it incrementally in steps and then test each step as we go along, okay? So that's the best way to approach a project, is to do it in steps. So the first thing you need is the XML file. And so we're going to create a user authentication file that's got the user IDs and passwords, make that login screen which we saw, which will read the file, have that show, hide, open eye, close eye toggle button happening. This is going to span across multiple forms as we just saw. We'll be able to read and search the XML file. When someone types in a user ID and password, we can actually search the file and check whether they're in the file. If they're not there, like Passy was not there, we don't let them in. So this is going to be a full user authentication front end that we're going to do in subsequent lessons, but not in this lesson. So the first step is creating the XML file of users. Now we recommend that you've done our previous XML lessons, so you know what an XML file is, but this is basically it. What we've got is our usual header. We're calling this data set users. We've got data table here, so each user record is a D-tab users, and then we have the fields, their user number, a primary key, username, user ID, and a password, all right? So each one of these, we've got three different users here. Now, as we saw in previous lessons, you can set it all up and type it in Notepad and save it, but it's much nicer to look at it in Microsoft Edge, which gives you this display. So we've got Bazza, Shazza, and the admin user as well. Okay, so you can get this in the downloads for this lesson, all right, as well as getting the full Word document and this presentation. So let's just have a look at that. So if you really want to fast track this lesson and don't want to kind of watch 1 hour of video or whatever, you can just get the downloads or talk to your teacher or instructor because they might already have these for you. And if they don't have them for you, tell them to spend the $5 and just get them for 30 people in your school to use, up to 30 people. All right, so we've got here, this shows you what's happening. This shows you the file, and you actually get the file as a .xml text that you can use straight away, save you typing it in. Got instructions here, how to set up the first screen, how in a project you add a second screen in, which is something new we haven't done before, how to get that main menu screen set up. So that's your 3 forms all set up, and doing the hide show toggle button there with the eyes. It kind of gives you the instructions just to get that set up. And then behind each screen, there's a set of code. So the Form 1 opening screen, there's some code that goes in there. And darn it, I did spell check on this, or I thought I had, but it's still squiggle underlining everything. Okay, we'll refix that up, and hopefully when you get it, it hasn't got all these squiggle underlines, because I thought Word was supposed to remember that. Although we have got a new copy of Word running. They did some Office 365 update in the last 2 days. But it used to remember all the stuff and not give you the squiggles. All right, so look, if you're a teacher, your good students could just grab this and run with it. But if you don't want them to be copying and pasting code, we'll then use the PDF part of the download, which just gives you these step-by-step instructions, shows the code, and the students could type it in. All right, so it's a very flexible learning package. And then the thing is, when students get stuck, they can just go to the video and click on the timeline section in the index to go to the section which they don't understand or which isn't working when they try it out, making this project themselves. So the first step is that we need to create this opening screen form. All right, so this form here, and we'll give you that picture too in the downloads if you want to use that one, or you can do your own dream team. You could have a soccer player or maybe NBA basketball or something like that. So we're going to create this login authentication process. Now, the only button we're going to set up in this lesson is the login one, and that needs to be called BTN login. So make sure that's named properly or it won't match up with the program code. And as we said previously, these other buttons will come into subsequent lessons. We'll do things with that. Now, this is the main form that happens when you start your new VB project, and that's called Form 1, and just leave its name as Form 1, okay? You can change the text in it, like in the top left-hand corner where it says TDT login, all right? Tennis Dream Team, TDT. That's okay, change the text property, but don't change its name. Leave its name as Form 1, all right? So then we make a second form for the login. Now, how you create a second form in your project, when you start a new project, you get your form there, Form 1, your first form. Now, when you want other forms, you go to Project and you go click on Add Windows Form, and then it'll open up this panel. Now on this panel, we just want Windows Form, and make sure you rename it down here from the name that VB gives it. So we've renamed it for its name here to Login Form, so we know which form this is when we're doing coding. All right, and so set that name up. Don't forget to do that, loginform.vb, and then just click the Add button. Okay, now when you click the Add button, a new blank form will appear, and we've just added items and set it up here to look in the same kind of thing as the original Form 1 which we set up. So you can just go to Form 1 and you can copy and paste this heading, labels and things from there, this picture box, and they just come across onto this new one you've made, so it makes it a lot easier. This color here, this intense blue, by the way, is called Hot Track. It's one of the system colors in VB. Now these will need some names on them. So the text box for the user ID needs to be called TXT user ID. This one needs to be called for password TXT user PW, and the login button is BTN try login, okay? So BTN try login for that. And on the password character text box, just change its property. They've got a thing called password char for the password character. Now we want the password to be hidden with little star symbols, which you get by pressing Shift and 8 on your keyboard. So the star asterisk symbol, set password char, and just type in one of those shift-8 star asterisk type symbols in the property of that when you set it up as well. And I think that's pretty much the login screen form done. And when you look in your Solution Explorer now, you'll see your Form 1 VB that came with the original project, and you'll see the new form you made, login form. So if you need to work on either forms, you can always go to the right-hand side there in Visual Studio. Just get into your Solution Explorer and click onto the form you want to work on, and that'll bring it up in your workspace. Okay, so we want to link this front form now that we had, the original TDT login, up to that login form, so that when they click the login button here, what it's going to do is it's going to open up that second form where they can type their user ID and password, right? So what we do is we just have double click on this form, just in the hot track blue area there, and no, sorry, double click on the button, on the login button. So BTN login, double click on that. It'll write the event code there for you for the BTN login, and then all we need to do is show the login form. So that other form that we made called login form, you just go login form.show brackets, and that is what makes that form pop up on the screen when you press the login button, okay? So we should test that out. So we run our program, we get this front form, and then when we click login, what should happen is that in front of that form, we should get the other form, right? The login form, this one here. So that should pop up. So, you know, do that code, that little bit of code on this form, which is behind this form, and then clicking the login button when you run it should bring up the second form. All right. So the linking between the two forms is working great. So now we can go to code the login form. All right, so we're working in the login form now, not on form 1. So be careful where you put this code. It needs to be on the login form. So on the login form, remember we had BTN try login, that button we put on the login form underneath the user ID and password. You need to double click on that, and then we add a whole lot of code in. Now we're going to be reading an XML file, so up the top we need import system XML. This one will automatically come up with its form name we gave it, login form. So make sure this is login form and it's not form 1. You need to be in this form here. And we're just going to set up, where is our XML file? We've got this XML file here called userdetails.xml, which you can get in the downloads, or just make it yourself and save it. And we need to dim an XML document. Now what that's going to be is that's going to be something in the program where you can just grab this whole file and just put it into that in kind of memory in the program for us to access. All right, so we have all that stuff up the top in the main area to dimension some variables. Then when you double click on BTN try login, we just need this code here to read the XML file, okay, which we'll just put down in a little separate subroutine down below. So we just called it read XML file, then we make private sub read XML file end sub, and inside that, first we want to check that the file actually exists. So we should always be doing kind of validation, checking of things and giving messages. So we just use the old computer file system, the file exists method in VB, brackets my user's XML file, which we specified back up the top here. Yeah, now if it does exist, that's great, and we can just load up that XML document that we've defined. All right, just take everything from the file, read it all in, bang, into the program sitting in this XML doc. But if this bit fails, we'll have an else, and it'll say user ID's XML file not found, file read error. Okay, so we'll stop at this stage and test it. Now, when we do that, we run the program, the login screen comes up, we put in a user and a password and click login, and we get an error. It says user ID's XML file not found. So it couldn't kind of find that file to read it. And that is a problem because we have not copied our user details XML file into our project. So that needs to get copied into the bin debug folder of the project, okay? So this is our path name on our computer here. So the main name folder is user login XML. Now, if you go in that and then go the next level down into user login XML, then in that folder there'll be a folder called bin for binary. So double click on the bin folder, and you just do this in normal Windows File Explorer, and then get into the debug folder. Now the debug folder should already have these other files in here, but we need to copy in the user details.xml file, right? So that it's in this bin debug file. And we've kind of seen that we had to do that like in previous lessons when we were reading files. But once we've done that, what will happen is we can add code to the login form. So yeah, test it and now it should work and find the file okay. So what we're doing now is we're going to search. So underneath where we had that read the XML file, that'll all work fine now without erroring. So we're ready to search for the user ID in the XML doc that we've loaded that file into. All right, so we're just going to dimension a users list as an XML node list, and we're going to select all of the items out of our XML doc that are for DTab users, all right? So we're not interested in getting the heading that's right up the top. We just want data that's within those DTab users tags, right? So we're setting up an XML node list using the doc, going to the doc and extracting out all the DTab users data. That's what this line of code's doing. And then we can go through the records and check them, all right? So first we dimension a Boolean user found yes, no field, true, false, and we set that to false because we don't know whether the record is there yet. Then for each user as an XML element in that users list that we made, we can now check, kind of like go in and check each of those DTab users records which are in the XML file. So we want the user ID on the screen to match exactly with the user ID in that file, and we want the user password that's on the screen to match exactly with the user ID in that file. Now we're using for each, so we're going to be doing kind of one user at a time here. So this is a loop that's going to go around 3 times because we've got 3 users in that file, remember back at the start. And each time it's going to check, does the inner text inside the file there, which we've put into this XML users list, if the inner text stuff in there matches up the text user ID.text that's on the form, well that's good, but we also need an and the password that's within the inner text of that password field for the XML. If that matches up with what's on the form, well then we're good to go. So Boolean user found equals true, and we want to exit out of this for next loop because we don't need to do any more processing. We've found a matching user. Otherwise we set Boolean user found equals false, and you know, if we were looking say for the admin one, which I think is the 3rd record in the file, I'd go through the first one, didn't find it, do a next, read the 2nd record, which was Shazza, that's not going to match up with the admin, do another read, finds the admin, finds the passwords correct, and can set it to true. But with Passy and his kangaroo too, he wasn't in the file, so it'll just go 1, 2, 3, hasn't found anything, no more stuff to read, so that loop will just finish. Now, when we finish the loop, we just need to check how things went. So if the user found was true, we're just going to put out a little message box, user and ID, password were found okay. Otherwise, we're going to put out a message box, user details not found, please try again, and just have a heading on that with login error on it. Okay, so this code isn't completely finished yet, but we've just put in a lot of code. And so we'll just test this. Now, before we test it, we're just going to change the password character property on the text box. So go on the form and that PW text box, just set the password char back to blank instead of having the asterisk there, because we just want to see during our testing what the user's typed in. So if we take password char and just backspace to have nothing in it, we'll be able to see the user. We'll show you what you mean here in the testing. So testing it so far, what's going to happen is if we put in Shazza and Shaz999, and that is actually her password, which is in the XML file, yep, it all works. User ID and password found okay. And she was the 2nd record, so we know the loop's working. It did the first one, Bazza, ignored him, did another loop and found Shazza, and then exited the loop, and we got this message. So that all worked fine. So Shazza, there she is, Shazza, Shaz999, that's exactly what the details were here, perfect match, so it tells us we're okay. But if you do good old Passy with his Kangaroo 22, have a look, there's Barry, there's Sharon, there's the system administrator, there's no Passy in that authentication XML file, so it tells us user details not found, please try again. So that's great, all the code we've done so far is working, and that's really good. So on to our next part. So I think this is like a whole section finished, so if you want to take a break, go and like code all that stuff and just get it working, pause the video and then come back again. All right, so now we're going for what we're going to have when they have successfully logged in, like Shazza typed in her stuff and it was all good. So instead of having that little message, we're going to make it go to the application main menu screen. So we need to build that screen. So we just add another new form onto our project. This one's called DT main menu is the name of this form. And again, we can copy and paste. We can take that heading off our other forms and put it in here. We've just got, that is the border style of the label, I think, has been changed to some 3D thing in the properties, and it has here as well. And this is a picture, this collage comes up as the whole 4 pictures, and you can get that with the downloads that go with this lesson, or make up your own little 4-picture collage for your soccer players or basketball players, whatever you're doing. We just put a group box around that and took everything out of the text property on it. This was another group box, and in the text property we said choose an option, and inside that group box we just put these 4 different buttons. So yeah, when you have a successful login, then you're allowed to go into the application, and this is going to be the front screen, the main menu for our tennis Dream Team application. So we will now fix up that form for when like Shazza was successful logging in. Instead of having that success message, we'll have it come to this screen, and it will also close down the previous 2 screens. Well, it actually won't close them down because that would stop the app. It's actually just going to hide them so that all we see is just this one screen here, but the other 2 are still sitting there hidden. All right, so let's get into that. So after that successful login, we need to display the main menu. So we changed the check process where we had that btn try login event code on the login form. So make sure you're on the right form. So at the moment, when we were at the bottom of that checking and processing the results of that search of the XML file, we had if they were found true, we were just setting out that little message box. So remove that whole line of code. We don't want the message box anymore. Leave this other one in here for Passy and his Kangaroo 22, so you can be told that he's not a valid user or password. Okay, so leave that one in and just delete that. And then in place of this message box, we're just adding this code here. So this is going to display the tennis team main menu after hiding the front end form as well as the login form. So the 2 forms we've had up so far will just be hidden and disappear, and a new one will come up, which is the Tennis Dream Team main menu. So we just go form1.hide brackets. Now you don't go login form.hide brackets. If you try that, Visual Basic will give you this referential error of some type that code for this program cannot refer to itself in the code. So because we're actually in the login form, that's the current active component that's running, you just do me.hide. So you have to do me.hide brackets to hide the login form. And then we do dt main menu.show brackets. So that's going to make that main menu for the application show up. So get rid of the message box, put these 3 lines of code in instead, 2 hides to hide the existing forms, and a show to bring up the new form, the main menu for the application. All right, so what should happen is that you go on the front screen, you click login, get onto the user login, Bazza, and that's his correct password there, BazzaBoy1234. So he goes to log in, and then these 2 forms should all just hide themselves and not be visible, and all we see is the Tennis Dream Team main menu form. And that's the kind of setup we want. So we've kind of got this authenticated user login front end for our application, okay? So that completes the coding of the login form for this lesson. So if that's all you really wanted to learn how to do, you could stop right here. But we suggest you don't. We suggest maybe you pause and take a break, but look, you want to do these other parts. We're going to have this fancy little show hide I button on the password and do a couple of things to make it look really professional, okay? So before we do that though, we'll code the log out button. So when you get to that DT main menu form for the Tennis Dream Team, there were 4 buttons down the bottom. We're just going to code the BTN log off button so that application closes down and exits. So look, other lessons we'll link up to profiles, summaries, and statistics, which we've kind of worked on already in, I think, the arrays lesson and the write text, read text lesson for our Tennis Dream Team. But look, we're just going to work on the log off button today. So make sure you've got this DT main menu form open up, whatever yours looks like for your dream team, and double click on the log off button so we can get to the code behind this form. And we're just going to have on that code an "Are you sure?" message type yes, no pop-up text box. So this is the way you code that. And if they say yes, because I'll have 2 options on that pop-up screen, yes or no. If they say yes, we need to close this current main menu form and then close the login form and close form 1, and that shuts down the whole application. So remember, we use .hide while we're still doing stuff just to hide the forms, but when we're totally finished and we want to just close the thing and shut down, we just use close rather than hide. So me.close, the login form gets closed, and finally form 1 gets closed, and the whole thing will shut down. So you need to close down all 3 of them. If you leave one of those hidden forms, still there, the app will still be running and it won't stop, okay? So it's kind of important that you remember, oh yeah, I had 1, 2, 3 forms. Yeah, I better close down all 3 of them, right? Don't leave any of them open or the app will not fully close. All right, so testing all that out, what happens is they hit the log off button on this main menu. Are you sure you want to log off and exit? So we're getting the message up the top, exit and close. You can click yes or no. If they do no, this message box just closes and they're still on that form. If they click yes, this form closes down, plus the 2 hidden ones do, so the whole thing's shut down. So now let's do the show hide buttons. So back in the lesson for user password login validation with the dog club, a previous lesson, we did this where we made these show hide buttons. So when the I was blocked off here, you cannot see the password, but if you click that button, it'll show to open I and you can see the password, like in this confirm password down here is on open I so we can see it. This one's on closed I so we can't see it. So if you click the close I there, you will get the open I and can see it. And on this one that's open at the moment, if you click that open I, it'll become a closed I and you won't be able to see it. So it kind of swaps between the 2 things of hidden password, show password, hidden password, show password, which is called toggling, like an electric light switch turning a light on and off. So we did learn how to do that previously, but you've probably forgotten, so we're just going to go through it all again. So this takes a few steps and you need to work carefully. So I think in the dog club we might have used a button and put an image inside a button. This one we're just doing it a different way, which we think works better. Add a picture box onto the form, and into that picture box import the closed I image from the downloads for this lesson. All right. And name this picture box pick I closed, and in its properties, the size mode property, set that to zoom. That'll kind of work best. So you kind of get your picture box in, resize it so it's going to be a nice size, import that closed I image from the lesson downloads, and then name that picture box pick I closed and make sure it's zoom for its size mode property so the thing fits in all neatly. All right, now, we need to note down, when we've got that all positioned and looking nice, we need to note down its location and its size, 64,40 for the size, because we need to make our open eye picture, which we're going to make soon. It needs to be the exact same size, and then later on we're going to put it at the exact same location so that they're on top of each other and look like there's only 1 button there rather than 2, or 1 picture there rather than 2. So this is a little trick to make a toggle type button. So the easiest way to get the same size is just take the one you've made and Control-C, Control-V to make another picture box. Name that picture box pick I open, and import into that picture box the OpenEye image from the downloads, okay? And then just go to its properties, check that it is 64,40, which will mean it is the exact same size as the first one we made. So we need to do all that. Now at the moment, while we're developing the code, we'll just leave the two images separated here. We won't move them on top of each other, just so we can see what's happening as the program runs, right? So right at the end, we'll move them on top of each other after we've made sure everything is working. So the next step is to go in the program code, and we need to do some stuff in the form load processing. So if you double click anywhere in that bright blue, hot track blue background part of the login form, that should open up the form load event. So this should be here for you, private sub form load. And in there, we're going to set the pick eye open. So the open eye, we want at the start of the program that one's just not there and we can't see it. So we said it's visible to false and it's enabled to false so that no one can click on it and do anything. And we're also going to set that password text box character. You know how we took it off so we could see stuff while we were testing and see the passwords. We're going to turn it back on. So text user.pw for that text box, set its password char property equals asterisk. So we can do this in the code rather than going into the form properties to do it. So we'll set all that up, and that is the form load coding done. And we run the program, and what should happen is that Baz is there. When he types in his password, it is hidden, and we're not seeing the OpenEye one down here. We're only seeing the ClosedEye one. So the OpenEye one is visible false and enabled false. So that's all working very nicely so far. And now we double click on that iClosed picture which we have on the form. So the iClosed one. I'm going to add this code because what we want to do is when they click on the iClosed, we want it to swap over to the iOpen. So we need to make iClosed visible false and iClosed enabled false. So the iClosed disappears. Make the iOpen one suddenly become visible and enabled so we can click on it. And so that the iOpen causes the password to be seen, we need to change the password char property. If that text box where the password is, change that back to nothing. All right, so it doesn't have the asterisks in there hiding everything. And that's all of the code we need. And when you test that, what'll happen is that Basil was here with his asterisks, but we clicked that ClosedEye one that was here and it's disappeared. And you can see that the OpenEye one is now there, showing us we're in OpenEye mode, and that's why we can see this password that's been typed in there. All right, so that's working really well, and we're about halfway there. I think we just need a couple more things to do. All right, so now that OpenEye picture which is showing, the second one sort of lower down, double click on that because we want to make that one, when you click on the OpenEye, it's got to swap back to the ClosedEye and hide the password. So the OpenEye visible needs to become false and enable false. We want the ClosedEye to become visible again and become enabled again. And we want the password char to go back to being an asterisk so that when we're seeing ClosedEye and we're in ClosedEye mode, the password will be hidden. So when we test the program, what happens first up when the form loads is it's in ClosedEye mode, and you type in a password and you'll see asterisks is there, all right? Then if you click on that ClosedEye button, it's going to change to an OpenEye button, and when the eye's open, we can see the password okay, all right? So we started off like this from the form load code we put in. When you click that from the code we put when this is clicked, it changes to OpenEye, that one disappears, and we can see the password. And if we click the OpenEye one, what'll happen is it changes back to ClosedEye, and suddenly the password is all closed again and hidden. And you can keep clicking those as many times as you like, and it'll keep swapping in between them. All right, so it's all really great. Now all we need to do is get those two buttons directly in the same position so that it looks like it's only one picture that or button that you're actually clicking. So remember, the iOpen one was sitting down here, so we need to actually go into its properties, click on that iOpen, go to its properties and change the location to what it was noted down in step 2, which was 518,246. So if you go back to step 2, when we first did the iClose button and got it set up, we noted down its location. So now we make this guy have the exact same location values, and he'll jump up from where he was to be on top of the other one. So it looks like we've only got one button. And that's actually, I think, everything's just about done by the time we get to that stage. So now we just test the program and check that the eye pictures work. So what'll happen is that it'll start running, it'll be in close eye mode, and anything you type in will have asterisks. If you click on that button, it'll change to open eye mode and you can see the password. If you click open eye, it's going to swap back this way to the left and you'll have closed eye and you can't see it. Click closed eye and it'll go to open eye and you can see it. Open eye, click that, it goes back to closed eye. So backwards and forwards here, changing whether you can see it or not based on clicking on what appears to just be one button, but it's actually two little picture boxes sitting on top of each other. So that completes all of the work we need to do for this lesson. And so that's a really nice little login front end screen for application. Now, of course, it's using an XML file where you can actually see what the user IDs and passwords are. And, oh, that's not very secure like that. Yeah, look, in a later lesson, we've got so many subsequent later lessons we need to do. We'll show you how you can use encryption. So in the program, we can have a kind of a scrambling routine that jumbles up all of the user's ID and their password. And then in the XML file, I'll just have this scrambled up, jumbled stuff. But what the program will do is it'll take what the user typed in, scramble it up into the right sort of scrambled, jumbled stuff so it can match up in the XML file, and then find that it's there and everything will be good. And if someone looks at the XML file, they've got no idea what the actual user IDs and passwords are. The other thing is some people will be saying, oh, but you should be doing this in a Microsoft Access database table. That's the way people do passwords and logins. Yeah, again, we've got a subsequent lesson plan that we have started a little bit of work on. Yeah, trying to do it with a Microsoft Access table to store the users and authenticate them. And yeah, but look, this XML way is just nice and easy, and we just thought we'd, show you this one first so you can get your head around all the things that need doing, and then we can move into encryption, then we can move into using a Microsoft Access table instead and hit you up with that. But that'll be separate further lessons, and before we do them even, we need to do like the administrator function for this thing we've just built here today. So there's a lot still to do, and oh yeah, just also a heads up that well, we'll do that in a minute. The challenge task. So the challenge task is whatever you're doing for your Dream Team project. Yeah, see if you could hook in one of the screens for that. So we made a screen in the XML data tables write XML lesson so that we could flick through the records of our Dream Team and see summaries. So you could kind of make that screen, bring it into this project, get the code behind that screen in here, get the file that this uses in there. See if you can make that kind of one there so that when they click on it, it'll actually link into this one here and start building the app. So yeah, if you've got time, that's a challenge task. It'll give you practice with this show form, hide form, kind of how we can do layers, link stuff. Each individual form has its own code behind it, which is great. This is the power of object-oriented programming. This is what makes VBNet such a great language for learning and making little prototype applications like we're doing here. All right, so the programming course, you can always go to PassyWorldOfICT.com programming, click on the program. That's got all of our lessons that we recommend you do in order, and it's from there that you actually get downloads for lessons as well. Now, just a heads up for next week, there's probably not going to be a video because it's Mother's Day here in Australia and I've got to travel a really long way to go see my mum. So yeah, that'll take up most of the weekend, so there won't be time to make a video or anything, but there will be one the following weekend. So next weekend we're skipping a video because it is Mother's Day here in Australia. I gotta go see my mom. All right, so that's it for this week's lesson. Enjoy programming in Visual Basic, and you see we're getting into some really cool stuff now where we can sort of have multiple screens going. We can have the user have to log in to see the screen where the main menu is and do all that stuff. And yeah, we're kind of really doing some neat things now, and we'll continue doing that with the further lessons. So we'll see you later on, probably in about 2 weeks' time, in the next lesson.